Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I am an e-learning evangelist here with eLearning Brothers. Today we're going to be talking about implementing an e-learning video into your course. This is the Captivate edition. We're going to be talking about how to get it into Captivate. Last month we talked about how to get it into Storyline, but there's some definitive changes that need to be done to get it into Captivate and looking absolutely perfect. So that's what we're going to be talking about. This webinar will be recorded. We'll get a copy of it out to everyone in an email later today. We'll also be posting it on our blog later in the week. If you have questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer your questions in the questions panel, or we'll try to answer them directly in the webinar, so feel free to use the questions panel as you need it. We'll get to as many of those as we can. If we can't get to your question, we'll do our best to continue the conversation in the webinar recap, or you're welcome to reach out to us directly, and we'll show you how to do that at the end. To talk to us today about Captivate, we have Bill Milstid, our senior developer, with us today. Bill is amazing. He knows everything about e-learning, at least about how to develop it for sure. And we're excited to hear what he has to say. Also, just so you know, one of the things we like to do after the webinar is try to follow up as soon as possible. Sometimes it's just to get feedback. Most of the time we would like to touch base, find out if anyone needs some one-on-one clarification about the webinar topics after the fact. All right, without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass the screen over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Andrew. All right, so show my screen. Okay, everybody.
That's great.
All right, great. So we're just gonna real quickly go over kind of how we're thinking about getting some videos here into Captivate, and then I'm gonna bounce it over to Andrew. Really, this is just more context. So I've got a template up here. It's actually one of our newer styles that's coming out. It's an 80s neon style layout file. And basically, I've got it set up the way I need for my client's module here, right? So I've got all my content populated. But at the end, after this text entry piece, we've got to drop a couple of videos into some blank slides that I've got set up. We're going to use 4 total. And Andrew is going to help kind of publish those out. We're not going to look at all 4, today. Let's just say that's how we're setting this up. So in order to get that over to him, in order to get those videos over from him, I need to get him a few very small bits of information, real easy to find. So in this case, I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to just let him know what my resolution is, right? So when we're getting these videos in, he has the ability to kick out videos pretty much at whatever size we need. Captivate, especially the way that, the new version works with Fluidboxes, we do kind of have an upper limit on width. So I want him to be aware of that when he's publishing, so that we can make sure that we keep our file sizes appropriate. And then file sizes being the secondary thing that we're going to check. So, my client has got about a 35 meg or so requirement, maximum rather, for published SCORM packages. Just a real quick way to do this, I went through and published this earlier without my videos, with my slides included. And, raw, this thing was only coming out at about 5 megs. I got to drop 4 videos in there, so that gives me about 25 megs to play with. I'm going to ask him to keep each one to about 5 megs or lower, so that I can insert this in and make sure that I should still be good on my export size. All right. So with those 2 pieces of information, 1024, 627, and a 5 meg size, I'm going to go ahead and ask Andrew to get me some videos. Does that sound good?
Excellent.
For you?
I can definitely do that. That'll be simple and nice. So let me get my screen coming over to you. All right, so here what I've chosen to use, and I'll show how to use it Premiere as well, but I've chosen to use Camtasia first to get Bill what he wants. Now the prime reason, I'll be honest, the prime reason I'm trying to use Camtasia here is because eLearning Brothers has templates that match the template style, the style template that Bill's already using in his project. So it's extremely easy for me to be able to brand these to match his project. Bill, what is the template that you're using there?
Yeah, this is the 80s neon template, and I think when we were looking through these, we found a complimentary one.
Yep, looks like that'll match the Pulse theme. It's got that same kind of fading look from the same color. So I'm going to grab the lower thirds and I'm going to stick it here on my video on Taylor. And I'll want to change these titles to match who he is. We'll say it's Taylor. And what was the font on those? What are the two fonts that you guys primarily use in that style?
Yeah, no problem there. You know, we're using Open Sans as our body font in that one, and the header font, the fun one, I believe it's a chalkboard. I've got a, sorry, I just
that's right. It's permanent marker. I remember now.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I can easily change those fonts to match permanent marker and Open Sans. We've got this here. And as it plays through, it plays through nicely. So now I've got this video. It's finished. It's branded. And I've got to get it over to Bill. So I'm going to come to Share to Local File. In the past, I've typically sent him a 1080p full MP4, as you can see in this option here on the screen. However, he has sent me some specific requirements. And so in order to make those changes, I'm going to click Custom Production Settings and click Next. I do want this to be an MP4. It's a more universal codec wrapper, so I'm going to make sure I use that. So we'll use MP4, click Next. Now we don't want it with the Smart Player. I don't want it to create an HTML5 file. I just want the MP4. So I'm going to turn off the Produce with Controller, come over to Size in this tab. Now he said he wanted it in 1024 wide. I'm going to keep the aspect ratios locked and put in 1024. Now I came in and did this earlier today, so it already says 1024. It used to say 1920 by 1080. I changed it to 1024. So, oops, 1024. So now that matches his requirement. As far as his requirement for size, this is where bitrate and compression comes in. So default, Camtasia is going to have my encoding mode set to quality, and it's going to set it to 60% as default. It's also going to set my frame rate to 24, which I don't want to touch. 24 is a great frame rate for a video. Keyframing every 5 seconds is fine. I can mess around with the H.264 profiles and levels, but I'm going to let those sit as well. Now I can come into this slider. This is the most important part. This slider I can drag around for a smaller file size or a higher quality, but I want to be really specific. I want to have the right compression for the right size, and I want to be able to control that and measure it. So I'm going to actually change it from quality to bit rate. And he said he wanted it, you said you want it less than 5 meg, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I do want to keep this definitely on the lower end of the bit rate. Now I already exported a 1200 and an 800 as far as bit rate, and I can show you what those look like. So here on the left, this is what the 800 looks like, and here's what the 1200 look like. Neither of them look really bad, but the 1200 here on the right definitely has more smoothness. There's more shadow control. You can see here on Taylor's neck there's a little bit of pixelation. His jaw is a little square, more square than natural. So I like this 1200 a little bit better because it does look smoother, but it will still give me a much smaller size. So I'm going to export at 1200 for my bit rate. Keep the color mode the same. Click Next. Don't make any changes here, and click Next, and here I can save it. Now I've already exported both of those. I'm going to come into my folder here where I've got the 800 and the 1200. The 800 comes in at only 72 kilobytes. The 1200 also comes in at 76 kilobytes. Very small videos. These two that I exported don't have the graphic on top of it. So with the graphic, they're going to come out about 3 meg. In fact, let me see. I think these are. I'm sorry. That's not even right. Those aren't the videos. Let me pull up the videos. That was the images. The videos should be much larger. Here we go. Okay. This bit rate. This is the 1200. It's 3.74 meg. That's way better. This thing in kilobytes is way too small. And then this smaller bit, the 800, is 1.24 meg. So going with the 1200, I still have plenty of wiggle room to give it to Bill. I've got 3.74 meg there. And that's what I'll send. Now, I've also sent Bill the full-size video so that he can show you kind of what those comparisons are, why it's way better to have your video resized before you export it. Coming into Premiere, I want to show you how to do the same thing. As you come into export your media, then that loads. I do want the H.264. It's going to give me the MP4. This says match source high bitrate, but I do want to change that. So I'm going to come down into the basic video settings, and I'm going to uncheck the width, and I'm going to change that width to 1024, which is what his requirement was. And then I'm going to come down to, let's see. Here we go, to bitrate settings. And the target bitrate and maximum bitrate are what I can drag around. And as I decrease these, this is in megabytes per second, so 1200 would be 1.2. I'm going to drag it way down, and maximum also down pretty far. And this will give me a different size video each time. So messing around with these bitrate settings is what's going to do that compression for you here in Premiere. So like I said, I already sent Bill both the uncompressed 1080 HD video, and I sent him a compressed 1024 wide with a 1200 bit rate at 3 megs. So you can compare those sizes and how they're going to work inside Captivate. So I'll go ahead and pass that back to you, Bill.
All right, so what I've got open on my screen here is just, well, it's our template. It's a single Fluidbox. I want to just bring in a video straight onto the slide. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that our Captivate template is 627, which is a little bit smaller than the video you've seen. Obviously, you can control kind of positioning and whatnot with your Fluidbox, or you can handle that gap that you're going to get top and bottom with some design decisions as well, right? We're not going to look into that today. We're just going to look into how to dump those videos right into your file, okay? And in both cases, it's the same. This new version of Captivate makes everything look really great and kind of function pretty well compared to the last versions. So I'm just going to take both videos, dump them straight into this Fluidbox and publish so that you can see the difference in quality, because the process will be about the same. So again, for any standalone video like he's just provided, we're looking at an event video here, most likely. Multi-slide synchronized videos, there's a really good, walkthrough on the Adobe site, on Captivate help site, if you need some more information about that. But effectively, it's same output from Andrew's end, by and large. So today, we're not going to be running a streaming video, just a video from our computer. So I look for that. First one I'm going to grab is this bitrate shrink one, or smaller one. I'm going to hit OK. You'll notice that pops it right into my Fluidbox for me here. I can obviously control, specific settings there. Mostly at this point, because this is a pretty clean input, I just want to change my skin and set that to be a clear skin that's dropped over the side, because that's what we've been using for this project for our client, right? So again, just, progressive video download, set your skin, drop it in, and for the most part in Captivate, that's about all you need to worry about. We're going to do the same thing here with a 1080p file, the full size one, and you'll notice when I do this, now, if I haven't selected my Fluidbox, it's just going to drop it straight onto the stage. And at that point, you really just want to drag it into your Fluidbox. It'll grab it, resize it, and this is part of the thing I was saying earlier about Captivate, this new version, really kind of doing some good stuff that I like a lot. Scaling video looks great in this version of Captivate. So what you'll see, even after I publish this, is that the 1080p is going to scale really nicely into the center of this file. All right, well, let's take a look at that. Okay, so one thing I didn't do was insert those into my table of contents, so I'm just going to jump forward on it. This is our smaller video that we had. I'll let that run through. You can see our quality is actually pretty darn good there.
I do want to clarify what we're seeing is a little bit jumpy, and that is GoToWebinar, not the actual video. It's playing smoothly.
Absolutely. And so on my end, what I actually want to draw attention to, it plays perfectly on my end. And actually something that's worth drawing attention to is the very minor differences in quality between this full size export that we had, this 1080p, and the previous, lower bitrate version. There are some minor differences in color, but really you've got to be unbelievably keen-eyed, I think, to notice them. You may get some artifacting in some small areas, but by and large, this video, for most purposes, is going to function as well as the full 1080p version and be significantly smaller in the overall file size, right? So that being said, earlier I published this, and my final output was about 24 megs for the zip here. That is exactly what we were looking for, right? We had about a 35 meg limit, and my final was about 24 or so. So all in all, we hit our mark, and I got some pretty darn good videos from Andrew, very simply. Do you guys want to go over anything else in here, Andrew, or you feeling pretty good?
So we've got a few questions that have come in regarding the Fluidbox. Does the video have to be inserted into a Fluidbox, or can it just reside on the stage by itself?
Great question. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it could reside on the stage by itself. I've got to be honest and say I haven't played with it. And as Captivate is graying out on my screen, I can't get in there and give it a shot too quickly. But what I would say is that probably so, and I would encourage you to go in there and not only play with whether or not you can just drop it on the stage in the middle of a Fluidbox project, which I'm sure you can if you remove the Fluidboxes from that individual slide, no issue there. But I would even say, maybe get in there and play with floating a video out of a Fluidbox to see how positioning and whatnot affects it. Yeah.
Another question that's come in here is, if you're placing a video in Slide and exporting the entire program into an MP4, will you see the entire video or just the thumbnail?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Andrew?
Sure. If you're placing a video in Slide and exporting the entire program into an MP4, will you see the entire video or just the video's thumbnail?
It's a great question. I'm unsure. I don't know. I've never actually done it that way, so I don't know. I apologize.
Let's see. Okay. Another one of our audience members, Eric, says you'll see the entire video. He's done that a few times, and placing the if you export to an MP4, it'll play the entire video before continuing on. So thank you, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Here's another question. Is it possible to import the video into the library and then move it to the slide from there, or do you have to put it directly into the slide? Bill, can you hear me?
Oh, hey, sorry, I'm some connection.
Quite a storm going on where you're at, Bill.
I apologize. I'm having some connection issues. I heard importing into the library.
Right. Is it possible to import the video to the library and then move it to the slide, or do you need to put it directly into the slide?
Yeah, no, the video import feature just directly drops it into the slide as is if you're inserting that way.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another question. Do you typically use 2 sets of controllers for the video? And you know what, folks? If Bill doesn't have a great connection, we might have to. Call this short.
No. I caught it. It sounded like it was lagging there. Yeah, no. Typically, we'll remove controls on the video and just run 1 set.
Okay, only 1 set. Excellent. I'm looking through. There's a lot of other great questions coming in, and hopefully we'll be able to get to as many of these as we can before you lose a connection. What about linking your video to a video server? so it's not directly in Captivate. Is this, would you call this a best practice? Do you think that that way is better than the other way? Or if you have to pull it from a video server, how would you best make that work?
Okay, so video servers, right? Yeah. There's pros and cons, I would say. So one con to running your video on a server is that you may not necessarily be able to control your controls depending on what you've got it on, right? So there's a little bit of a downside there to some extent, but by and large, my personal preference, if the project fits this, right? So if our user audience fits this, if the use case for the actual course fits this, I personally prefer to have it on a streaming server just because it makes everything a lot easier. It doesn't impact the overall size of the course really. I mean, you don't really have to deal with handling the library objects and putting your video in there, and then it takes away a lot of the download issues from the user side. But there are, aside from just the, hey, you can't control your controls, there are also user limitations with that, right? So, in a past life, I worked in a place where we really wanted to use a lot of YouTube videos for what we were doing because so much content existed out there that we could leverage and repurpose, but our user base couldn't have access to YouTube. So, we really had to get creative with how we were handling videos, content-wise. That did lead to kind of a discovery on our part that we couldn't host videos at all with that user group and had to do everything in line. Yeah, I would say it just depends. It kind of depends on your situation. My personal preference is to stream, but that's just based on what my experience has been in the past, I think.
Sure. Okay, there's another question, and I apologize, everybody. I'm trying to pick questions that Bill can answer without having to show you his screen. At this point, I'm a little concerned about his connection, so we'll keep him as long as we can without sharing his screen. So do your best here, Bill. This question is, we're using Captivate 7 in our organization. However, there is a need to import a lot of video clips. What video formats work best in Captivate 7 that will transfer over to publish in Internet Explorer? My video plays in preview mode, but isn't playing when it's published.
That is a very good question, and it is a very specific question. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer to you, but I would say that.
I think your connection dropped out for a little bit, Bill. Would you mind repeating that answer?
Oh yeah, actually, I was saying with regards to Captivate 7 and the specifics with the IE, I don't have an answer for you today. I would say maybe if we could capture that question, and then I can try to get a response to it in some capacity after this, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, I'll grab that question. We'll reach out to you afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that.
No problem. Let's see. Oh, there's another question here. When making your videos, are you making them in 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second? I typically capture at 30 frames per second and then export at 24, just because it's another size benefit. But if we wanted to do 30, I could do 30. Capturing at 30 is becoming more and more standard than the previous 24. So if you want to capture at 30, it at least will give you the option to do 30 if you want to go that way. If you don't want to go that way, you can then shrink it down to 24 and it'll still look just fine and it'll still look pretty. Another question here. I've tried inserting video into presentations and they end up just buffering and never playing. Can you suggest what I can investigate to correct this problem? One video is over 50 megabytes, but the others are only 9 meg or less. My instinct is do some of the compression things that we talked about today and make them all small. 50 meg in the grand scheme of things isn't that big, but in the case of an e-learning course, that can still start to feel really big. So try to keep your videos 10 meg or less. I'm not sure why your 9 megs wouldn't be working. Any ideas, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would ask, have you tried them individually? And so what I would probably suggest is go out and re-encode these, try to get them down small, try to get them set up, you know, exactly at size for your project. And then I would just do a test on one to see if you can isolate this, because yeah, a 9 meg file that's just buffering, and especially if that's like the only slide in the course, right? So you don't have a ton of other weight that you're trying to deal with. That does seem like a lot. Or it does seem like it would be an issue if it was sitting there buffering. So I would kind of isolate it and just see if, okay, is this the video? Is it a combination of what I've got going on? Is it just, you know, just my connection? What's the deal here? I do know if you can follow kind of some of what Andrew was saying here and get these down to especially something like 3 or 4 megs, and you're still having some buffering issues, that is definitely an outlier. Yeah. Beyond that, though, I think it's really it may be kind of may potentially be user connection, or good question. Yeah.
A lot of troubleshooting to do on that one.
Yeah, a lot of troubleshooting to do there.
Here's another question. I've published all my videos in MP4, but often get prompted to let Adobe Media Encoder convert these files when I put them in a project. What causes that, and how can I avoid it in the future?
That is interesting. So I would guess what are you? I guess my question would be, what are you using to encode those MP4s? And so if you have access to Adobe Media Encoder, I would say try to use that. You know, Adobe product is probably going to be kind of a better link there. It's yeah. I would first, my question would be where the MP4s were coming from and what was encoding them, and then I would honestly just try to encode them. I would encode them either again or you know, in the initially through Media Encoder if I could.
So this person, Kenny, has come back and said that they use a video editor, Movavi video editor, published at H.264 MP4 files. Again, I don't know what the issue would be there, but just like Bill said, Adobe's Media Encoder will make sure, even if you export it out as an H.264 MP4 again, it will make sure that it has the correct Adobe readable information under the hood so that it works. Oh, this person is someone else saying that they had the same issue even though they exported from Premiere. So I'm not sure. What version of Captivate are you guys using to run into that issue?
That's a very good question.
While you guys are giving us that information, I'm going to move into another question here that talks about, let's see. Is there a way to export video out of Captivate that has a transparent background? Are you saying so that the project background, so that the skin is transparent? Is that your question? Is there a way to do that? Maybe we can answer that question, Bill. You mentioned that you can make the skin in the background match your course, but could you make that transparent?
Yeah. So so are you're asking exporting basically a video with an alpha channel from?
Oh, are you saying? I see. They continue. They say not Captivate, but Camtasia is the continued question. No, Camtasia does not do transparent backgrounds. Camtasia doesn't put out an alpha channel at all. I think that answers your question. And again, I apologize. There was a follow-up there that I did not read. Captivate probably doesn't put out an alpha channel either, does it?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Let's see. Names of software capable of downsizing videos. You can downsize with Adobe Premiere. You can downsize with Adobe Encoder. That'll allow you to downsize as well. Camtasia will allow you to downsize, as we showed you. Any video editor that allows you to adjust the bit rate or video size is technically downsizing. So as you're looking for different video editors or different softwares, just look for those things, adjustments to bitrate or video size. Okay, so coming back to our wild question where Captivate is asking us to, let me scroll down, where Captivate is asking us to go through the media encoder to get an MP4 to be an MP4 again. Lots of people saying that they're using 2017 and getting that issue. So that's interesting to me. That's shouldn't be an issue. Have you run into that at all, Bill?
I've not. But then again, like most of the videos that I'm getting for my purposes are coming a lot out of AME. So,
Oh, here's a thought. Eric says that if he puts an MP4 directly into his slide, then it keeps it as an MP4, and the encoder doesn't kick in. But if you import the MP4 into the library, then the encoder tries to convert it to an SWF.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Now, so that's actually, yeah, that's curious. I wonder, yeah, because I was wondering if it's just a metadata issue, but that's really interesting to hear.
In fact, he goes on to say that he now has the best practice where if a video is less than 500 frames, he converts it to a GIF to avoid these issues and to make sure that they stay small. That's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, so I guess the short answer is we don't know why they do that, but that is a good way to prevent it. Keep it out of the library, I guess, if you don't want to convert it. One other question. We'll take another question.
That right here may just be why I've not experienced it, right? Because I typically just inline insert video. So I'm wondering, actually, what might be worth looking into is whether or not there's some conversion going on there. But, all right. Sorry to interrupt there, Andrew.
No problem. We keep your questions coming. These are great. Here's another question. Can you customize the controls on playback? For example, when the back button is pressed, it will go back to a specific slide or a specific place in the video. Sorry, you hearing me, Bill? I hear the rain. It's got to be a crazy storm over there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm catching parts of it. It's just coming across slow. I apologize.
No problem. No problem. So I'll repeat it again. It's about the controls on playback. When you hit the back button, it'll go to a specific slide or to a specific place in the video. Is that an option?
Hey, Andrew.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. I'm sorry, man. I apologize, sir. I missed the back half of that again, and I apologize.
No problem. Due to your connection, we're only going to take 2 more questions, and then we're going to cut it off. I don't know how much longer we can plug on through that storm. This question is customizing controls on playback. For example, can you make it so that when you click the back button, it goes to a specific place in the video or back to a specific slide?
Customizing the player the video like skin player controls? Is that what we're? I'm sorry, I'm not. Or
the question is just, can you customize the controls on playback, whether that be the video controls or the regular controls? I guess I'm confused about the on playback part of it. I'm just not. I think I'm maybe not following what we're doing or what we're. Sure. Yeah. That question is from David. David, if you still want that question, there's information up on the screen. Send an email to info@eLearningBrothers, and we'll do what we can to get that answered for you. Last question before we move on. People want to know how to avoid adding the video to the library if that is what's causing their issue. And to answer that, I'm just going to tell you to watch the video recap that we send you, because that's exactly what Bill showed today. So we'll get that recap sent out to you as soon as we can. I've also got here up on the screen information about ELBX. It's our first user conference that's coming up. Bill's going to be speaking at that conference, so you definitely won't want to miss that. If you've got more questions about developing e-learning, he's going to be there to answer all your questions. I'll be there to answer some questions, and we'll be recording most of the conference as well. Also, if you want to see the style template that Bill demonstrated or these other Camtasia templates that we've got, you can schedule a demo at 801-796-2767, send an email to info@elearningbrothers.com, or go check them out yourself at elearningbrothers.com. I apologize that we weren't able to get out to all these questions. I'm going to try to snag as many of these as we can before we end here so that we can get those answered afterwards. We unfortunately, of all the things we can control, the weather in Florida is not one of those. So I apologize for the connection issues that we're having here. We'll try to get that taken care of and get all your questions answered. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Bill for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.